For decades, the world has been captivated by the British royal family, their triumphs, their scandals, their private lives under constant public scrutiny. But some secrets, some whispers are so tightly guarded that even the most seasoned reporters hesitate to repeat them out loud. Today, we uncover one of those secrets. At 41, Prince Harry has finally revealed what many of us suspected, yet few dared to say. The circumstances surrounding the births of his children, Archie and Lilibet, were not what the tabloids reported. They were born through surrogacy. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Surrogacy in the royal family. A concept that until now, most people only discussed in hushed tones behind closed doors. It's the kind of revelation that makes you question everything you thought you knew about royal protocol, about tradition, about the way one of the most scrutinized families in history navigates personal challenges. And yet, the story isn't just about procedure. It's about emotions, sacrifices, and choices, made under a pressure that few of us can even imagine. Imagine being constantly watched, every move dissected, every word analyzed. Now imagine that you are making decisions about bringing new life into the world under that microscope. The pressure isn't just intense, it's unbearable. And the stakes, almost unimaginable. For years, the speculation was endless. Was Archie really Harry and Meghan's firstborn in the traditional sense? Rumors swirled, surrogate whispers, cryptic interviews, and those strange discrepancies in timelines that made royal watchers raise their eyebrows. Some dismissed it as tabloid nonsense, others suspected there was truth hidden in plain sight. The media ran stories hinting at something unusual, stories that Harry and Meghan had to live with day after day without comment. And now, at last, the truth has come forward. But before we dive into the confirmation itself, let's explore the context. Why would surrogacy even be considered by a royal couple? Why keep it a secret? For the uninitiated, surrogacy isn't just a medical procedure. It's a labyrinth of emotional, legal, and ethical considerations. In the UK, surrogacy is legal but fraught with restrictions. In the US, the rules vary by state, some requiring court approvals, others protecting the anonymity of the surrogate. For someone like Prince Harry, whose every move is scrutinized, the decision to pursue surrogacy is not just personal, it's political. And yet, personal needs sometimes outweigh political consequences. That's exactly what seems to have happened here. Reports, though previously unconfirmed, suggested that Meghan faced complications during pregnancy or had medical advice recommending against traditional pregnancy. Harry, ever the devoted husband and father, confronted a choice that many would struggle to even consider. Should they risk her health, or should they explore alternative paths to parenthood? It wasn't an easy decision. Imagine private conversations with advisors, doctors, and lawyers. Imagine sleepless nights, worrying about public backlash, wondering if the media would ever respect boundaries. This is where the human element of this story becomes clear. Behind the headlines, the judgment, the royal scrutiny, there were two parents desperate to ensure their children could be born safely. And surrogacy offered a path forward. But secrecy comes with its own complications. Because when you are a member of the royal family, no secret stays buried for long. Whispers become leaks, leaks become stories, and stories become global headlines. And for Harry and Meghan, it wasn't just about privacy. It was about safety. Reports indicate that any disclosure about the births could have had unpredictable consequences, from media hysteria to strained family relations. The balance between transparency and protection became a delicate dance, one that only a handful of insiders could even begin to understand. Yet, despite the secrecy, clues were scattered all around. Observant royal watchers noted unusual absences, discrepancies in travel dates, and subtle hints in interviews. Social media became a hive of speculation. Some claimed surrogacy outright, others dismissed it. And through it all, Harry remained silent. Not because he didn't care, but because revealing the truth too soon could have endangered his family. Then came the moment, the long-awaited revelation. At 41, Harry chose to speak. Not in passing, not in cryptic interviews, but in a context that ensured his children's safety while finally setting the record straight. And the impact was immediate. Across the globe, tabloids and broadcasters scrambled to analyze every word. Fans and critics alike paused, reevaluating what they thought they knew. Social media exploded with commentary, memes, reactions, debates. And at the center of it all, two children, Archie and Lilibet, whose lives had been protected by secrecy, now stood at the heart of a conversation that was both intimate and public. Now you might be wondering, why now? Why reveal this at 41? Timing, as always, is everything. Sources close to Harry indicate that he weighed the pros and cons carefully, considering the timing in relation to his memoir, public perception, and his children's well-being. The truth, as it turns out, was not just about transparency, it was about control. By speaking for himself, Harry ensured that the narrative wouldn't be dictated by speculation, leaks, or sensationalized reports. And yet, even as the truth comes to light, questions remain. How did the rest of the royal family react? Were there private confrontations? Did this revelation strain relationships further? Or did it finally bring some clarity? What does this mean for public perceptions of Meghan, who has long been vilified and scrutinized for her choices? And perhaps most importantly, how will history remember this decision? Because history is rarely kind to those who deviate from tradition. The monarchy, steeped in centuries of protocol, has rarely faced questions about assisted reproduction. The precedent set here could ripple far beyond Archie and Lilibet, affecting conversations about privacy, family, and parental choice for generations to come. And while some celebrate the courage of this revelation, others view it as controversial, even provocative. But the story isn't just about procedure or public reaction. It's about Harry and Meghan navigating a world that's both adoring and hostile. It's about children whose lives are at once deeply private and intensely public. And it's about a family legacy, centuries old, now intersecting with modern medical technology, ethical dilemmas, and media scrutiny in ways that no one could have predicted. So as we embark on this exposé, keep in mind one thing: every detail, every anecdote, every revelation is not just about what happened, but about why it matters. We'll explore the whispered rumors that circulated long before the official statement, the private struggles behind closed doors, the legal and ethical challenges of surrogacy in the royal context, and the emotional toll on everyone involved. We'll look at the fallout, the reactions, the backlash, the surprise alliances, and the long-term implications for both the royal family and the public narrative surrounding Harry and Meghan. And here's the thing. Even as Harry finally speaks, there's more beneath the surface. As the media digests the revelation, insiders whisper of further complexities, subtleties, and behind-the-scenes negotiations that remain hidden from public view. Secrets layered upon secrets, each one with the potential to reshape how we see the Sussexes, the monarchy, and even the institution of family itself. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It all started quietly, almost imperceptibly. A name whispered in the corridors of the palace, a suggestion passed along in private conversations among aides and advisors. At first, nobody paid it much attention. After all, the royal household is full of rumors, idle chatter, and misinterpretations. But this was different. This was the kind of whisper that refused to stay buried. The first signs were subtle. Observers noticed inconsistencies in timelines. Small details about hospital visits didn't add up. Reports about Meghan's pregnancies sometimes conflicted with statements from official spokespeople. Fans speculated, tabloids probed, and social media sleuths began to piece together fragments, creating a narrative that was equal parts curiosity and conjecture. And yet, nothing had been confirmed. Not officially, not by the palace, not by Harry himself, but inside the walls of Kensington Palace, the whispers carried weight. Courtiers began to murmur about possibilities that stretched beyond tradition. Surrogacy, alternative fertility methods. It was almost unthinkable for members of the royal family to even consider such options openly, yet the hushed conversations suggested that perhaps the impossible was becoming reality. Imagine being in those rooms, the tension palpable. Advisors glanced at one another with the knowledge that the wrong word could ignite headlines. Security personnel maintained an ever-present vigilance, not just for physical threats, but for information leaks. And in the center of it all, Harry and Meghan moved cautiously, aware that every choice was being watched, interpreted, and dissected. The stakes were enormous. A single misstep could damage reputations, inflame media speculation, or worse, endanger the family they were working so hard to protect. The rumors themselves were fascinating in how they evolved. Early on, most insiders dismissed them as tabloids trying to sell newspapers. The idea that surrogacy could be involved in a royal birth was sensational, scandalous even. But as more fragments of information surfaced, from cryptic remarks during interviews to offhanded comments from friends and aides, the whispers grew louder, more credible. And those inside the palace could feel the tension mounting with every new speculation. Some of the most telling signs came from behavior rather than words. Meghan, for example, was often photographed with a serene composure that masked private struggles. Harry's interactions in public settings became more measured, cautious, and, some would say, protective. Small changes, subtle body language, and calculated public appearances began to suggest that there was more happening behind the scenes than anyone could guess. Observers started connecting dots, an absence here, a sudden trip there, a delay in announcements, and slowly the rumors began to take on a shape of their own. It wasn't just the palace staff and advisors who noticed. The media, as always, was relentless. Paparazzi trained their lenses, social media analysts pored over timelines, and the rumor mill reached a fever pitch. Stories floated about surrogacy arrangements, legal consultations, and discreet hospital visits. Each leak sparked a firestorm of speculation, and the more the media tried to confirm or deny, the more the story grew legs of its own. Yet, despite the growing storm, the royal family remained tight-lipped. Official statements were careful, calculated, and often intentionally vague. The strategy was clear: do not confirm, do not deny, and maintain as much control over the narrative as possible. But as anyone familiar with the royal press knows, silence is often interpreted as guilt, or at least as confirmation. And then there were the insiders. Courtiers, longtime palace staff, and friends of the couple began to provide carefully worded hints. Not confirmations, but enough to keep speculation alive. It was like a chess game. Each person moved carefully, ensuring that the truth remained obscured while still managing the growing public curiosity. As the whispers intensified, questions started to emerge not just about the logistics of the births, but about ethics, family dynamics, and the future of the monarchy. Could the royal family truly accept surrogacy? How would this impact succession lines, public perception, and relations with other family members? What would this mean for Harry and Meghan personally and legally? These were questions that had no easy answers, and they fueled the rumor mill even further. Social media played its own role in amplifying the whispers. Observant fans noticed minute details in photographs: Meghan's attire, her timing of public appearances, Harry's expressions during interviews. Every gesture was scrutinized, every smile dissected. Analysts dissected timelines down to the hour. Even the smallest anomaly, a canceled event or a delayed announcement, was interpreted as evidence supporting the whispers of surrogacy. The palace, accustomed to media speculation, found itself caught in a whirlwind it could not entirely control. And then came the leaks. They weren't official statements, but whispers from staff, friends, and acquaintances who had connections to the inner circle. Some claimed to have inside knowledge of meetings between lawyers and medical professionals. Others hinted at confidential conversations with senior advisors. The leaks were fragmented, sometimes contradictory, but they all pointed to a central possibility: that Harry and Meghan had chosen an unconventional path to parenthood. Yet, for all the speculation, nobody outside the inner circle truly knew the full story. Even close family members were reportedly kept in the dark about certain details, a testament to how carefully Harry and Meghan managed the process. This secrecy, while protective, only fueled more curiosity. Every unanswered question was an invitation for speculation, and the global public was more than willing to fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. The emotional impact of these whispers was profound. Imagine being Harry, constantly under scrutiny, hearing the rumors but unable to respond without compromising privacy or safety. Imagine Meghan, navigating the pressures of public life, media criticism, and intense speculation, all while making life-changing decisions about the well-being of her children. The weight of secrecy, expectation, and responsibility was enormous, and yet they carried it with a level of composure few could match. Despite the challenges, Harry remained focused. He monitored the leaks, managed public appearances, and worked to ensure his family's safety. Meghan, too, found ways to protect herself and her children, balancing public appearances with private time and maintaining control over information flow. Their strategy was not about hiding the truth forever, it was about timing. The revelation would come, but only when it could be delivered on their terms, safely and with as much control over the narrative as possible. And so, the whispers continued. Rumors of surrogacy, of legal consultations, of carefully orchestrated hospital visits, all circulated yet remained unconfirmed. The palace remained quiet, the media speculated endlessly, and the public waited, desperate for answers. Each day, the tension grew. Each leaked detail was analyzed, dissected, and debated. The story had become larger than any individual, larger than any single rumor. It had become a narrative that would dominate headlines and conversations for years to come. And yet, for all the speculation, one thing remained certain. These whispers were not baseless. Sources close to the couple would later confirm that every rumor, every suspicion, was grounded in reality. But at this stage, the palace was silent, and the world was left to guess, wonder, and speculate. The whispers, small as they were at first, had grown into a force impossible to ignore. Every corner of social media, every news cycle, every royal commentary show had picked up the thread. The curiosity gap had widened. The question now was not whether the rumors were true, but when the truth would be revealed, and how the world would react when it finally came. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the fairy tale you imagined wasn't quite a fairy tale at all? What if behind the cameras, the red carpets, and the glittering headlines, life was filled with anxiety, uncertainty? For Meghan and Harry, that was reality. Behind closed doors, they faced struggles that the world could only guess at, and some that even the media never suspected. Public appearances tell only part of the story. Meghan, poised and graceful on the surface, carried immense physical and emotional burdens. Sources close to the couple later described long hours spent with doctors, private medical consultations, and careful monitoring of health concerns. Pregnancy, even in the best of circumstances, is physically demanding. For someone constantly in the public eye, it becomes a tightrope walk, balancing health, privacy, and expectation. Every appointment had to be considered for timing and visibility. Every movement could be photographed, analyzed, and turned into a headline. Harry, for his part, carried a different weight. As a prince, his life is never truly his own. Every decision has consequences, every action scrutinized. Yet as a husband and father, he faced an even greater responsibility, protecting Meghan, supporting her, and ensuring that their children would have a safe, happy beginning. In private, sources report that Harry's protective instincts were palpable. Long nights spent worrying about media coverage, family reactions, and medical updates became routine. There were days when the pressures seemed overwhelming, and yet he carried on with a quiet determination that few outside their inner circle could fully comprehend. These struggles were compounded by public pressure. Social media, tabloids, and even official commentary from royal circles were relentless. Every minor misstep, every delayed appearance, and every unusual schedule adjustment was scrutinized. Fans speculated, critics criticized, and conspiracy theories flourished. Meghan, in particular, faced unrelenting commentary, some praising her choices, others questioning her motives and even her character. For a woman already navigating the complexities of pregnancy, these attacks were more than just frustrating. Even within the family, tensions simmered. Insider accounts described conversations that were carefully controlled, private, and sometimes strained. Differences in opinion about timing, privacy, and public messaging created stress points. Harry and Meghan reportedly consulted lawyers, medical advisors, and trusted confidants extensively before making decisions, aware that any misstep could escalate into a public relations disaster. Amid this pressure, the emotional stakes were extraordinarily high. Harry and Meghan were not only trying to navigate a high-profile life, they were trying to make life-altering decisions about the health and future of their children. The choice to consider surrogacy was not made lightly. It was a decision shaped by medical advice, personal desire, and a profound understanding of their circumstances. But the decision also carried potential fallout, ethical considerations, public perception, and the possible reactions of the royal family. Every step was measured, every conversation deliberate. One source close to the couple revealed that there were nights when Harry and Meghan would simply sit together, reflecting on the enormity of the choices ahead. Decisions that, in another life, might have been private and simple, were now amplified 1,000-fold by their status. These moments were often quiet, sometimes tense, but always deeply human. They had to reconcile the pressure of public life with the intimate needs of their family. The stakes were further complicated by medical realities. Reports suggest that Meghan faced certain complications or health risks that made traditional pregnancy difficult. Whether related to past pregnancies, medical history, or advice from doctors, these considerations were central to the decision-making process. Surrogacy, while providing a safer path, brought its own challenges: finding the right surrogate, negotiating contracts, maintaining privacy, and ensuring that all legal requirements were met. Imagine the weight of that responsibility. Every choice had ripple effects. Every action was scrutinized. And yet, the couple pressed forward, often in isolation, relying on trust, communication, and their shared commitment to their family. Their private struggles were largely invisible to the public, hidden beneath layers of security, careful messaging, and intentional discretion. Despite the challenges, there were moments of lightness and humor. Sources recount stories of Harry and Meghan laughing at absurd tabloid claims, sharing private jokes in the quiet of their home, or finding solace in small, personal rituals. These moments, fleeting as they were, offered a reminder that even in the most intense scrutiny, human connection and love remained central. But the public pressure was relentless. Leaks continued to surface, sometimes hinting at surrogacy, sometimes misrepresenting details. Each rumor sparked renewed speculation, forcing Harry and Meghan to carefully manage responses without revealing sensitive information. It was a delicate balance. Too much silence risked confirmation by default, while any statement carried potential consequences. And yet, these struggles, these private battles, also reinforced their resilience. The couple reportedly developed strategies to manage stress, maintain privacy, and protect their children's well-being. They learned to navigate a world where every choice was magnified, every decision scrutinized, and every action interpreted as either heroic or scandalous. The experience shaped them, strengthened their partnership, and ultimately set the stage for the decision that would finally bring clarity: surrogacy. As the speculation and pressure mounted, it became clear that revealing the truth would have to be done carefully, not out of fear, but out of necessity. The health of Meghan and the safety of their children were paramount. And as insiders would later reveal, Harry spent months preparing for the moment when the truth could be shared publicly. Every detail considered, every word measured, every consequence weighed. Even within the couple's closest circles, there was understanding of the delicate balance at play. Friends and trusted aides reportedly offered counsel, support, and guidance, recognizing that this wasn't just about public perception. It was about protecting a family in the most challenging circumstances imaginable. And yet, the emotional toll remained. The combination of secrecy, public scrutiny, and personal responsibility was exhausting. There were moments of doubt, moments of fear, and moments when the weight of expectation seemed almost unbearable. For Harry and Meghan, these private struggles were ongoing, shaping not only their decisions, but their relationship, their family dynamics, and their public narrative. In many ways, their private struggles mirrored larger societal conversations, questions about reproductive choice, the role of privacy in public life, and the pressures faced by individuals navigating high-stakes decisions. For Harry and Meghan, these were not abstract debates. They were lived realities, experienced daily, with all the attendant pressures and emotional complexities. And still, despite the challenges, they persevered. Their determination to protect their children, make thoughtful choices, and eventually reveal the truth demonstrates a level of resilience few could fully appreciate. Every decision, every compromise, and every calculated move reflected a careful balance of love, responsibility, and courage. But even as they navigated these private struggles, they could not anticipate the next wave, the public revelation, the reactions from family, and the storm of scrutiny that would follow. The whispers that had begun quietly in palace corridors were about to become headlines, and the world would finally confront the truth that Harry and Meghan had long guarded. And in that moment, when speculation turned into confirmation, the pressures of their private struggles would intersect with public perception in ways that would define the next chapter of their story. And no one would see the full impact coming. Imagine standing at a crossroads where every path carries immense consequence, not just for yourself, but for the life of a child. That was exactly where Harry and Meghan found themselves. Behind the palace walls, in the quiet of private consultations and whispered conversations, a decision was forming, one that could redefine everything the public thought they knew about royal tradition. Choosing surrogacy was not something Harry and Meghan approached lightly. It wasn't a casual alternative, a convenience, or a headline grab. It was a profound choice born from necessity, care, and deep consideration of their family's well-being. Sources close to the couple later revealed that discussions began months, even years, before the public could have suspected. Doctors, legal advisors, and trusted confidants all played a role, offering insights, guidance, and perspective. But ultimately, the decision rested solely with the couple. The reasoning was multifaceted. For Meghan, medical advice reportedly suggested that traditional pregnancy carried significant risks. Whether due to prior health concerns, complications, or risk assessments, continuing a conventional pregnancy could jeopardize her health. And for Harry, the thought of putting his wife at risk was unimaginable. Every father and partner can relate to this fear, the primal desire to protect those you love, above all else. But for them, the stakes were magnified 1,000-fold. Every choice was scrutinized, every risk amplified by the lens of global attention. Emotional stakes loomed large. Imagine weighing the desire to carry your child against the need to protect your spouse and yourself from potential danger. Imagine doing so, knowing that the world is watching, ready to judge every decision. Harry and Meghan reportedly spent countless nights discussing, debating, and envisioning possible outcomes. It wasn't just logistics. They were confronting profound ethical, personal, and emotional dilemmas. And yet, the decision was not merely practical. It was deeply human. Choosing surrogacy offered a path to parenthood that minimized risk while maximizing safety for everyone involved. It allowed them to have children, to grow their family, and to fulfill deeply personal desires, all while navigating the extraordinary constraints of their public lives. But the choice came with its own complexities: legal, ethical, and emotional. Legal considerations were intense. Surrogacy is not a simple one-step process, especially for someone in the royal family. Contracts, court approvals, and confidentiality agreements were essential. The couple had to ensure that the arrangement protected the rights of the surrogate, guaranteed privacy for their children, and adhered to international regulations, as some arrangements reportedly involved clinics in both the UK and the United States. Every clause, every stipulation was scrutinized to avoid future legal complications. One misstep could turn a carefully guarded secret into a global scandal. Emotional considerations were just as significant. Sources describe conversations in which Harry and Meghan weighed not only the practicalities but the emotional impact on themselves, their surrogate, and ultimately their children. They discussed what it would mean for Archie and Lilibet to understand the circumstances of their births and how to present it to them in a way that preserved love, respect, and security. These were not superficial debates. They were life-altering decisions, carried out with care and empathy. And then there was the question of secrecy. How do you protect a private medical decision when your every move is analyzed? How do you keep a choice of this magnitude hidden from a media ecosystem that thrives on leaks, speculation, and scandal? Harry and Meghan reportedly employed layers of privacy, trusted intermediaries, discreet medical professionals, and strict confidentiality agreements. Every visit, every consultation, and every document was handled with caution, reducing the risk of exposure while maintaining the highest level of care for everyone involved. Even in the midst of planning, the emotional weight was evident. Sources recount moments of quiet reflection shared between Harry and Meghan late at night. Conversations were intimate, sometimes tense, always honest. They imagined worst-case scenarios, debated alternative approaches, and prepared themselves emotionally for the scrutiny they knew was inevitable. This wasn't just about giving birth. It was about managing a story that would captivate the world for years to come. The decision to pursue surrogacy also required careful coordination with family and advisors. While some family members were eventually made aware, many were left out of the loop initially, both to protect the couple's privacy and to avoid premature leaks. The tension between family loyalty, privacy, and public expectation was ever present. Every interaction had to be measured, every word chosen carefully. At the same time, there was a practical side to consider: selecting the surrogate. Reports suggest that the couple was meticulous in ensuring that the surrogate met not only medical criteria, but also aligned with their values and discretion requirements. Emotional compatibility, professionalism, and reliability were all paramount. After all, this was someone entrusted not just with a pregnancy, but with a story that would one day become public, and they needed a surrogate who could navigate that responsibility. And then there were the logistics: clinics, medical procedures, timelines, and travel. Surrogacy is not instantaneous. It requires careful planning, multiple medical appointments, and ongoing monitoring. Harry and Meghan reportedly maintained a tight schedule, coordinating visits across countries while managing media exposure and family obligations. It was a feat of planning, patience, and relentless attention to detail. But even with meticulous planning, emotions were inevitable. Reports describe moments of stress, tears, and tension. There were fears about leaks, fears about public reaction, and fears about potential complications. Harry, known for his protective instincts, often took on the burden of shielding Meghan from media exposure and criticism, while she navigated the emotional complexities of the decision itself. Their partnership, sources say, was a key factor in navigating these challenges. Through it all, one theme remained constant: the choice was theirs. In the face of tradition, media pressure, and family expectation, Harry and Meghan exercised agency over their lives and their children's futures. Surrogacy was not just a medical solution. It was a statement of autonomy, care, and responsibility. It represented a path forward that balanced health, privacy, and family continuity in a world where every personal choice could become public fodder. And yet, secrecy alone was not enough. Insiders indicate that the couple also prepared carefully for the eventual disclosure. They considered timing, messaging, and potential reactions from family, media, and the public. Every word they would eventually share was considered, crafted, and rehearsed, ensuring that when the truth came out, it would be presented in a way that protected their family while clarifying the story for the world. Through it all, Harry and Meghan's commitment to their children was evident. Every consideration, from the surrogate's selection to the timing of public statements, was guided by a singular principle: safeguarding the well-being of Archie and Lilibet. The love, foresight, and courage required to navigate such a path under unprecedented scrutiny is almost unimaginable. But it was exactly what they demonstrated. And yet, even as the decision was finalized, there were moments of doubt. What would the world think? How would family members react? Would the media respect their boundaries, or would they be merciless? Every choice carried uncertainty, and the consequences, while carefully managed, remained unpredictable. But the decision had been made. The path forward was clear, and the couple moved with careful determination. Surrogacy offered a solution that balanced health, privacy, and family continuity. It was a choice grounded in care, foresight, and love, yet surrounded by complexities and challenges that the world would only slowly begin to understand. And as they navigated the final stages, preparing for the arrival of their children, whispers still lingered in the palace corridors. Rumors, speculation, and leaks continued to swirl, each one amplifying the stakes, the drama, and the tension. The world was still watching, still guessing, and still waiting for confirmation. And what came next would not just reveal a family choice, it would ignite reactions, spark debates, and shift perceptions in ways that no one could have predicted. It started as a whisper, barely audible outside palace walls. But whispers have a way of growing, spreading like wildfire once they touch the right ears. In the months following Harry and Meghan's private decision to pursue surrogacy, the palace experienced an unusual tension, a sense that information, carefully guarded for so long, might leak at any moment. And in the world of royal observation, any leak is a spark waiting to ignite a global inferno. The first unofficial stories were small. A journalist reported an offhand comment from a supposed insider, another hinted at unexplained hospital visits. At first, these stories were dismissed by official channels as speculation, but the media, trained to spot inconsistencies, anomalies, and potential scoops, began to connect dots. Observant reporters noticed travel patterns that didn't align with public statements, subtle timing discrepancies between appearances, and cryptic social media posts from friends or acquaintances. Every minor detail was analyzed for hidden meaning. Insider leaks began to surface in earnest. Staff members, friends of friends, and even palace aides provided fragments of information. Some were factual, some distorted by misinterpretation, and others deliberately ambiguous. But all were enough to feed curiosity. The leaks were strategic in an unintentional way, never fully confirming, never fully denying, but providing just enough to keep speculation alive. The effect on the media ecosystem was immediate. Headlines appeared with bold claims, some subtle enough to avoid outright lies, but provocative enough to generate clicks. Royal secret parenthood, Sussex children born in secret arrangement, palace staff hint at surrogacy. Social media exploded. Threads, hashtags, and discussion boards buzzed with debate. Fans and skeptics alike tried to piece together a puzzle whose image remained incomplete. And the pressure on Harry and Meghan grew exponentially. Each day, new stories surfaced, each one requiring careful monitoring. Insiders report that Harry would often spend hours reviewing media coverage, assessing whether leaks posed a real threat, and determining how to respond without revealing private details. Meghan reportedly focused on managing public appearances and maintaining composure, knowing that the smallest misstep could escalate speculation even further. The leaks didn't just target the couple, they reverberated throughout the palace. Advisors debated strategy, how to control the narrative, how to protect the family, and how to ensure that sensitive medical information remained confidential. Security teams heightened monitoring, legal advisors prepared contingencies, and communications staff scrambled to craft statements that could satisfy media inquiries while revealing nothing. It was a delicate dance. One wrong move could unravel months of careful planning. And the public pressure was unrelenting. Online discussions became arenas of speculation and accusation. Memes, opinion pieces, and theories circulated at lightning speed. Some speculated that surrogacy was a cover-up for health complications. Others imagined elaborate scenarios involving international clinics, secret travel, and hidden agreements. The mixture of truth, half-truth, and pure conjecture created a fog that made it nearly impossible for anyone outside the inner circle to know what was real. Even Harry and Meghan's allies were cautious. Friends and confidants were instructed to avoid public comment, to protect privacy, and to manage conversations in ways that minimized exposure. Every interaction became a potential leak point. Insiders recount moments where a single careless phrase could trigger weeks of speculation. The stakes weren't just professional, they were deeply personal. Yet, despite the pressure, the leaks had an unintended consequence. They forced Harry and Meghan to refine their narrative, to prepare for the eventual moment of truth. Sources report that the couple began carefully planning how to address the surrogacy decision publicly, weighing timing, language, and emotional impact. They knew that sooner or later the story would emerge. By controlling how and when it came out, they could mitigate damage, protect their children, and assert their voice before others filled the void with speculation. As the leaks multiplied, the media frenzy reached a fever pitch. Tabloids ran bold headlines with varying degrees of accuracy. Social media influencers and gossip commentators debated endlessly, dissecting every public appearance, clothing choice, and interview snippet. Each news story fueled further speculation, creating a cycle that seemed impossible to break. Yet for Harry and Meghan, it wasn't about winning the narrative. It was about protecting their family while ensuring that the truth, when revealed, could be shared on their terms. The emotional toll of this media storm was significant. Sources describe nights when Harry would sit in the quiet of his private study, reviewing the latest articles, calculating risk, and preparing responses. Meghan, meanwhile, focused on maintaining a calm, composed presence in public, even as speculation swirled behind the scenes. The couple's resilience, patience, and strategic thinking were tested daily, often under scrutiny that most people could not imagine. And then came the moments that truly amplified the frenzy: partial confirmations, cryptic social media posts, and accidental hints from people close to the family. Even a seemingly insignificant comment, misinterpreted, amplified, and repeated, could spark viral speculation. Each leak, intentional or not, became a building block in a growing narrative that seemed to take on a life of its own. Legal and ethical concerns added layers of complexity. Surrogacy, by its nature, involves privacy and consent. The couple had to ensure that any leaks did not violate agreements, compromise confidentiality, or endanger anyone involved. Every public statement, every interview, and every appearance was measured against these considerations. The combination of legal obligation, ethical responsibility, and emotional stakes made the leaks not just a nuisance, but a potential crisis. And yet, despite all this pressure, there was a silver lining. The leaks indirectly prepared the public for eventual confirmation. By gradually exposing fragments, the world's expectations were subtly shaped. When Harry finally spoke, the impact was magnified, not because it was unexpected, but because the groundwork had been laid, building suspense and anticipation over years of whispers, speculation, and partial revelations. Insiders report that Harry and Meghan became highly strategic, using the leaks to refine their messaging. They considered timing, language, and context, ensuring that the eventual disclosure would resonate emotionally, clarify misunderstandings, and protect their children. Every element was deliberate, every step calculated. This was not about sensationalism, it was about control, safety, and family integrity. Even with careful planning, the emotional strain was undeniable. Living under constant scrutiny, navigating rumors, and managing a narrative that involved the health and privacy of their children required extraordinary patience and resilience. Sources indicate moments of tears, tension, and exhaustion, counterbalanced by determination, love, and a shared commitment to doing what was right. And as the media frenzy reached new heights, it became clear that the story was no longer just about private decisions. It was about the intersection of family, tradition, public perception, and media power. The leaks had created a storm that would test every relationship, challenge every assumption, and ultimately set the stage for a revelation that would leave the world stunned. But what came next would break through the whispers and rumors, revealing truths that the palace had struggled to keep hidden, and spark reactions that no one could have predicted. It was one of those moments the world never sees: the private conversations, tense phone calls, and meetings behind closed palace doors. Yet the stakes were enormous, and the tension between brothers, Prince William and Prince Harry, was palpable. For years, their relationship had been scrutinized, romanticized, and simplified in headlines, but the reality was far more complex. Now, with whispers of surrogacy surrounding Archie and Lilibet, that complexity exploded into something almost tangible. The initial signs of strain were subtle. Public appearances occasionally showed tension in body language, tight smiles, rigid posture, avoidance of extended eye contact. Insiders noticed that conversations between the brothers, once warm and frequent, had become cautious, carefully measured, and often mediated by advisors. The surrogacy rumors acted as a magnifying glass, amplifying existing pressures and insecurities. At the heart of the tension were not just personal disagreements, but deeply entrenched expectations and loyalties. William, heir to the throne, carries the weight of tradition and protocol. Every action he takes is measured against centuries of precedent. Harry, increasingly independent, sought to carve out his own path, balancing royal responsibilities with personal desires, public advocacy. The surrogacy whispers struck at a point where tradition and modernity collided. Sources close to the palace later described private conversations that were anything but casual. Advisors reported that William questioned Harry's choices, not necessarily in the language of condemnation, but in terms of potential repercussions for the monarchy, public perception, and family unity. Harry, in turn, felt misunderstood, constrained, and at times judged unfairly. The result was a growing rift, one that neither could ignore. Emotional stakes were high. For Harry, this wasn't just about defending a family decision. It was about protecting his wife, ensuring the safety of his children, and asserting autonomy over his family life. For William, the concern was broader. How would these unconventional choices reflect on the royal institution, on the monarchy's image, and on his own responsibilities as future king? Every conversation was charged with tension, expectation, and emotion. And then came the text messages, emails, and private memos, leaks of which would later fuel public speculation. Sources indicate that words once intended for private resolution were misinterpreted, and in some cases, leaked deliberately or accidentally. The media, already attuned to the surrogacy whispers, seized upon these communications, framing them as evidence of a feud. Headlines quickly emerged: royal brothers clash over children, Sussex rift deepens amid surrogacy rumors, William and Harry at odds, palace in turmoil. The fallout extended beyond public perception. Within the palace, aides and advisors scrambled to mediate, attempting to maintain stability while avoiding further leaks. Meetings were scheduled, conversations moderated, and carefully drafted statements prepared in case tensions became public. Yet despite these efforts, the emotional reality of the sibling divide persisted, quietly shaping the atmosphere around every decision. Harry, aware of the media's influence, approached the tension with a careful mix of restraint and assertiveness. He recognized that public displays of discord could overshadow the personal importance of the decisions he and Meghan had made. Still, the strain was undeniable. Sources report that there were moments of heated exchanges, quiet confrontations, and lingering resentment that lingered long after any meeting ended. For Meghan, witnessing the tension was equally stressful. Insiders described moments where she mediated, supported Harry, and attempted to diffuse conflicts, all while managing the emotional and physical demands of surrogacy, media scrutiny, and public life. The dynamic was a delicate dance, supporting Harry while respecting the sensitivities of the larger family, all under the constant gaze of global attention. The brothers' conflict wasn't purely personal. It reflected broader societal and institutional pressures. William's adherence to protocol, public expectation, and royal precedent clashed with Harry's desire for autonomy, privacy, and family agency. Surrogacy, as a non-traditional choice, became the lightning rod that exposed these tensions. And while outsiders saw only the headlines, insiders knew that the rift involved deep emotional layers: loyalty, betrayal, fear, and love, all intertwined in a complex web of family dynamics. Public perception amplified the situation. As leaks, speculation, and misinterpreted messages circulated, commentators, journalists, and social media users framed the situation as a feud. Pundits debated motivations, alliances, and morality. Fans took sides, often unaware of the private emotional context. The world became an echo chamber, intensifying every misstep, every tension-filled conversation, every word spoken. Or, unsaid, legal and institutional considerations added another layer. Advisors worried not only about public perception, but about the potential ramifications for future royal decisions. Would unconventional family choices set a precedent? Would it influence public trust in the monarchy? Every personal decision intersected with institutional consequences, further complicating the relationship between brothers. Despite all this, moments of humanity persisted. Insiders report private attempts at reconciliation, small gestures of understanding, and fleeting reminders of shared history. There were conversations that reminded them of childhood, of shared experiences, and of the bond that still existed beneath the tension. But these moments were fragile, often overshadowed by the immense pressures surrounding them. And then came the tipping point. A single message reportedly sent late at night that escalated tensions into a confrontation that would later be partially revealed in leaked accounts. Words intended to clarify intentions were interpreted as accusations. Concerns for protocol were seen as personal attacks. The exchange, while private, would later fuel speculation, framing the narrative as a deepening feud. Harry and Meghan, aware of the stakes, continued to navigate the situation with care. Their focus remained on the children, the surrogacy process, and eventual public communication. Yet the shadow of tension with William loomed over every decision. The emotional weight was heavy, love for family intertwined with fear of misinterpretation, concern for children's well-being, and a desire to protect privacy. And through it all, the media watched. Social media exploded with speculation about the brothers' relationship. Headlines framed the tension as irreconcilable, ignoring nuance, context, and the private negotiations happening behind closed doors. Yet insiders note that the reality was far more complicated, layered with history, emotion, and a delicate balance between personal agency and family loyalty. What's clear is that this tension didn't just affect Harry and William. It influenced decisions about privacy, messaging, and ultimately how the surrogacy story would eventually be revealed. Every leak, every rumor, every misunderstanding became part of a larger narrative that would shape public perception for years. And just when it seemed that the sibling tension might be managed behind closed doors, an unexpected disclosure surfaced, one that would force the palace to confront the reality of Harry and Meghan's decisions head-on. The friction, the resentment, and the secrecy would collide with the public eye in ways no one could have predicted. And what came next would push the brothers' conflict into the spotlight, setting the stage for confrontations, reconciliations, and revelations that would shock both the royal family and the world. Meghan faced while arranging surrogacy for Archie and Lilibet, including behind-the-scenes negotiations and emotional stakes. Surrogacy isn't as simple as finding a willing surrogate and waiting for a baby to arrive. For Harry and Meghan, it was a labyrinth of legal hurdles, ethical considerations, and logistical complexities, compounded by the fact that they were members of one of the world's most scrutinized families. Every step had to be meticulously planned, every document reviewed multiple times, and every detail secured against leaks that could jeopardize not only their privacy but their children's futures. The first challenge was understanding the legal frameworks. Surrogacy laws vary dramatically between countries, and in some cases, even between states or regions. In the United Kingdom, surrogacy is legal but heavily regulated. Surrogates have rights to the child until formal parental orders are granted, and commercial surrogacy is prohibited. In the United States, the rules are state-dependent. Some states allow commercial surrogacy, others have restrictive requirements for parental rights, contracts, and clinic approvals. For a couple whose every move is public, navigating these regulations was not just a matter of paperwork. It was a matter of personal security. Legal advisors were consulted at every stage. Sources report that Harry and Meghan worked with teams both in the UK and the US to ensure compliance and privacy. Lawyers drafted detailed contracts to protect all parties, the surrogate, the intended parents, and the children themselves. The contracts addressed parental rights, medical decisions, confidentiality agreements, and provisions for potential complications. Even a single misworded clause could have led to legal disputes or public exposure, making the stakes extraordinarily high. Confidentiality was paramount. In a surrogacy arrangement, leaks can occur at any point, through staff, medical personnel, or even acquaintances. For the Sussexes, whose lives are constantly under surveillance, maintaining secrecy required additional layers of protection. Legal teams inserted strict non-disclosure agreements, layered security protocols, and private consultations designed to minimize risk. Every hospital visit, every discussion, and every document handling required deliberate caution. But legal hurdles weren't the only concern. Ethical considerations loomed large. The couple needed to ensure that the surrogate's rights were fully respected, that she had agency over her body, and that the arrangement did not exploit anyone involved. Sources indicate that Meghan, in particular, was deeply involved in vetting surrogates, speaking personally with candidates to ensure alignment with her values and the emotional well-being of everyone involved. This wasn't a transactional decision, it was a moral and emotional undertaking. Even beyond the law and ethics, there were logistical challenges. Surrogacy involves carefully timed medical procedures, ovulation tracking, embryo transfer, monitoring, and prenatal care. Harry and Meghan had to coordinate travel, appointments, and legal oversight while keeping all details under wraps. Every movement was scrutinized, and even a minor scheduling error could attract media attention. The couple reportedly maintained tight schedules, often coordinating across time zones, clinics, and legal jurisdictions to ensure everything proceeded smoothly. The emotional stakes were intertwined with these legal hurdles. Imagine negotiating contracts while worrying about the health of a child not yet born. Imagine explaining medical procedures and legal requirements to a surrogate while also maintaining absolute privacy. For Harry and Meghan, each decision carried both personal and public consequences. Every step required balance, ensuring legal compliance, protecting privacy, respecting the surrogate, and safeguarding the well-being of their children. Insiders report that the process included multiple consultations with medical ethics boards, reproductive specialists, and legal experts. Decisions were cross-checked for risk, legality, and ethical alignment. Every potential outcome was mapped and mitigated. This meticulous planning ensured not only the safety and rights of all involved, but also minimized the risk of public exposure. Yet, even with careful planning, tensions arose. The couple faced moments of doubt and anxiety. Would the legal framework hold up if something unexpected occurred? What if the surrogate faced medical complications? What if sensitive information leaked to the press? Every potential scenario was analyzed, debated, and addressed with extraordinary care. The weight of responsibility was immense. One particularly challenging aspect involved international law. Since surrogacy arrangements involved multiple jurisdictions, questions of citizenship, parental rights, and legal parentage became complex. Ensuring that Archie and Lilibet would be legally recognized as the children of Harry and Meghan, both in the UK and abroad, required coordination with government agencies, legal experts, and medical authorities. Every step of the process had to be airtight to prevent future legal disputes or challenges to parental rights. And then there were the contingency plans. What if a complication arose during the pregnancy? What if the surrogate needed additional medical care? Legal teams drafted detailed scenarios covering emergencies, unforeseen medical conditions, and even potential disputes with the surrogate. Every clause, every contingency, every scenario was considered, ensuring that no detail was left to chance. Despite the technical complexity, the emotional dimension remained central. Harry and Meghan reportedly spent hours discussing not just legalities, but how the children would be told about their surrogacy in the future, how to protect them from public scrutiny, and how to foster a sense of love, security, and belonging. This was not merely a legal transaction. It was a deeply human, profoundly emotional journey. Advisors and insiders noted that the couple's approach combined pragmatism with compassion. Contracts and legal agreements were drafted with precision, but emotional considerations guided every decision. The surrogate was treated with respect, privacy was maintained for all parties, and the ultimate goal was the safe arrival of the children into a loving, secure family environment. At the same time, the couple had to anticipate public reaction. Surrogacy, particularly for high-profile figures, can be controversial. Harry and Meghan had to consider not only the legal and ethical dimensions, but also the social, cultural, and political ramifications of their decision. Preparing for eventual disclosure, they planned messaging that would protect their family while clarifying the facts and countering misinformation. And as they navigated these hurdles, the pressure from media speculation and palace whispers continued to mount. Every rumor about surrogacy, every leak, every inquiry added urgency to the legal and ethical preparations. The couple needed airtight contracts, secure processes, and clear communication plans. The stakes were extraordinary, the consequences of missteps potentially catastrophic. Finally, after months of planning, consultations, and deliberation, the legal framework was secured. Contracts were signed, contingencies were in place, and privacy measures were fully implemented. But even with this groundwork completed, the world outside remained unaware. The story was carefully contained, every detail a closely guarded secret, every person involved bound by strict confidentiality. And yet, insiders whispered that the story was only beginning. Even with legal protections, the arrangement's eventual revelation would have profound implications, not just for Harry and Meghan, but for the royal family, public perception, and societal conversations about surrogacy, privacy, and parental choice. Because no legal document, no contract, and no confidentiality agreement could control curiosity. No matter how airtight the framework, the world would eventually demand answers, and when they came, the implications would ripple far beyond what anyone had imagined. And what came next would force the world to confront the truth in ways that would change the narrative forever, and challenge even the closest relationships in the royal family. The day had finally come, though the world had no idea. Behind closed doors, carefully orchestrated and meticulously guarded, the births of Archie and Lilibet unfolded in a world shielded from the cameras, the media, and even the palace gossip mill. For Harry and Meghan, this was a culmination of years of planning, anxiety, and careful maneuvering. Every detail mattered, every precaution was necessary, and every step was executed with precision. The environment was a stark contrast to the public spectacle most associate with royal births. There were no grand announcements, no cheering crowds, no paparazzi snapping photos from the street. Instead, there was quiet, careful attention. The surrogate, selected with extreme care and trust, was attended by a team of private medical professionals, all of whom understood the stakes: the health of the surrogate, the safety of the children, and the privacy of one of the world's most famous families. Insiders describe the atmosphere as tense, yet intimate. For Meghan, the knowledge that this process was necessary for the safety and well-being of herself and her children carried an emotional weight. There were tears of relief, gratitude, and the raw emotion of a parent finally meeting their child. Harry, for his part, is reported to have been deeply emotional, his focus unwavering on the children and the surrogate, ensuring that every moment was supportive, caring, and respectful. And yet, despite the careful planning, the stakes were immense. Even minor leaks could have turned this private moment into global headlines. Hospital visits were scheduled discreetly, transportation meticulously coordinated, and staff carefully vetted. Every communication, from emails to phone calls, was secured to prevent even the smallest hint from reaching the press. The couple reportedly relied